Little People, Big Dreams. Simone De Beauvoir. Written by Maria Isabel Sanchez Vegara. Simone Lucie Ernestine Mary was born into a wealthy family in France. She lived in an elegant house in the city of Paris with her parents, little sister, and servants. From an early age, Simone's father encouraged her to read and write. He often told her that she had the brain of a man. But why is a boy's mind different than a girl's? Simone thought. Overnight, her family lost their fortune. Her mother took on the housework, while her father did little to help. Simone thought this was unfair. She had become a feminist before the word even existed. Her parents managed to save enough money to send Simone and her sister to a prestigious Catholic school. Her father sent them to study so they could earn a living by themselves without relying on a man for money. But when Simone turned 14, she started to question everything she had ever learned. Some questions were really tricky to answer, like, does God exist? She wasn't so sure anymore. Simone decided to go to college and become a philosopher. That's someone who loves finding new ways of thinking. But she wanted to become a writer too, so she began a journal and started to write her first stories. One day, she joined a group of students all preparing for the same exam and met a young man named Jean-Paul Sartre. He was not just her soulmate, he was her mindmate too. Simone or Jean-Paul never married or lived under the same roof, but they lived their love story in their own unique way. After college, Simone became a teacher. She was teaching in Paris when World War II broke out. She spent a lot of time alone and wrote more than ever. Soon, her first novel was published. It caused a scandal when it first came out. Readers were shocked. Simone was the first person to write about women making their own choices. Over the following years, Simone had many adventures. She wrote books and met other revolutionaries trying to change the world, just like her. Simone kept writing for the rest of her life, inspiring women around the world. They called her the mother of feminism. And thanks to little Simone, we now know that we are not born men or women, just special human beings with a life full of choices to make. Simone de Beauvoir was born in Paris, France, to a wealthy family. Shortly after World War I, her family lost most of their fortune. In spite of this, her parents still sent Simone to a private school. They knew she would have to be well educated in order to earn a living by herself, without relying on a husband. Young women were expected to get married at that time, and her family didn't have enough money for a dowry, and amount of riches that was passed from the bride's family to her husband when they married. So Simone used her freedom from marriage to study subjects that interested her. She went to college and gained a degree in philosophy, and then a higher degree on top of that. At 21, she became the youngest person to pass one of the most prestigious philosophy exams in France. While studying, she met Jean-Paul Sartre, a like-minded thinker and the man who would become her life partner. Together, they shared ideas and supported each other, but they never married. Simone went on to write many texts, both fiction and nonfiction. She said in her most famous book that one is not born but rather becomes a woman. Simon showed that as we grow up, we learn behaviors and ways of thinking that can create inequality between men and women. The book was revolutionary as it introduced the idea that we all have choices to make about how we live our lives. Simon lived her life courageously, putting into practice ideas that form foundation for the women's movement decades later. And she was full of hope for change in the future, saying, "The free woman is just being born." The end.